An American helicopter fires on an Iranian boat in the Persian Gulf, and in this country, an uproar in pro football and baseball over free agents.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. The Persian Gulf is once again a firing zone for American forces tonight. An American helicopter surprised an Iranian gunboat, placing mines in the Gulf and opened fire. NBC's Pentagon correspondent Fred Francis is in Washington tonight with late details. Fred, where and when did this happen?
Tom, it was an extraordinary development, according to a Pentagon official. For the first time, an Iranian amphibious ship came very close to Bahrain on the side of the Persian Gulf where U.S. warships are stationed. In this map here, you can see Bahrain. The American helicopter spotted the Iranian amphibious ship laying mines 50 miles northeast of Bahrain over the side. The American commando helicopter was using a night vision device. It spotted the Iranians laying the mines, fired on the Iranian vessel with machine guns and cannons, set the stern ablaze. And as of early this evening, that Iranian vessel was dead in the water, according to Pentagon officials. Earlier in the day, Iran attacked the Gentle Breeze, a British flag carrier in the northern Gulf, and the reporters in the Gulf could hear Mayday calls and rescue operations going on up there. So U.S. forces around the Bahrain area, where the USS command ship LaSalle is stationed, were on extra alert, and they spotted this Iranian amphibious ship. The president was advised of this on his way back from his UN speech from New York. He said that it was just a defensive measure, that this ship was laying mines in the path of a U.S. ship. There is no further response intended by this government. They say hitting that Iranian ship was the appropriate response. Tom?
And no American casualties, right?
No
Fred?
American casualties, Tom. The firing was one way.
Thank you very much. Fred Francis in Washington tonight. Shortly before those attacks occurred today, President Reagan was delivering a stern warning to the Iranians in a speech at the UN General Assembly here in New York. As NBC's Chris Wallace reports now, the president wants to turn up the heat on Iran if it does not agree to a ceasefire.
The president today tried to bring the 7-year war in the Persian Gulf to an abrupt end. He challenged Iran's president, Ali Khamenei, to accept a ceasefire when he addresses the UN tomorrow. Iranian diplomats were not in their seats.
If the answer is positive, it would be a welcome step and major breakthrough. If it is negative, the Council has no choice but rapidly to adopt enforcement measures.
The enforcement the president wants from the UN Security Council is an arms embargo against Iran. The Soviet Union and China have resisted that move, but U.S. officials think they can be pressured to go along. Today, the Soviets would not say whether they'd back an embargo, but they did urge the Iranians to accept a ceasefire.
It would be ideal if tomorrow the president of Iran would say, yes, the resolution will be carried out, will be implemented.
But while they were talking at the UN, Iran was apparently hitting a British tanker in the Gulf. The president was asked if this was Iran's answer to his call for a ceasefire.
I don't think of it as an answer. I think it's just symbolic of their barbarism.
Mr. Reagan also talked tough to the Sandinista government of Nicaragua, saying he'll continue backing the Contra rebels until the government implements true democratic reforms.
Understand this. We will not, and the world community will not accept phony democratization designed to mask the perpetuation of dictatorship.
The Sandinistas are reopening the opposition newspaper La Prensa to comply with the Central American Peace Plan, the Guatemalan Agreement. U.S. officials have dismissed this and other reforms as communist propaganda. But the Sandinistas say it's Mr. Reagan who's hurting the peace process.
He said that he supports the Guatemalan agreement, but in practice, he is going to do exactly the contrary.
But it's Iran that's the focus tonight, and the American message is clear. Whether it's the president's challenge at the UN or the helicopter strike in the Gulf, the U.S. government is rapidly losing patience. Chris Wallace, NBC News, with the president in New York.
NBC News State Department correspondents John Cochran and Ann Garrels report tonight that a high-ranking Soviet official has outlined for them Moscow's strategy in arms control over the remaining months of the Reagan administration. The Soviet official said once the agreement on short and intermediate-range missiles is complete, they want to move toward a 50% reduction on long-range missiles. Star Wars would be treated as a separate issue, he said, but Moscow would nullify the agreement on long-range missiles if work on Star Wars went too far. This Soviet official did acknowledge that Moscow is betting that the next U.S. president will abandon Star Wars, the space defense system. Also coming up here tonight on NBC Nightly News, Kenley Jones and the appearance today of Jessica Hahn before a federal grand jury investigating the finances of evangelist Jim Bakker and his television ministry. And on special segment tonight, Fred Francis on blacks in the American military, doing well but worried that their best days may be over. The place of free agents in pro baseball and pro football is causing major turmoil in those two sports tonight. Football players are preparing to go on strike. Baseball players have a big victory. Free agents are players who can bargain with other teams once their contract runs out. And baseball players are convinced that club owners conspire to restrict that process in an effort to hold down escalating salaries. Well, today, a federal arbitrator agreed with the players. More on the baseball story now from NBC's Richard Valeriani.
In 1985, Detroit Tigers star Kirk Gibson became a free agent after hitting 29 home runs and driving in 97 runs. But no other major league club made him an offer, and he re-signed with the Tigers. Gibson was one of 62 free agents at the end of the 85 season. When only 2 of them got contracts with other teams, the Players Union decided to file a grievance, charging the owners with acting in concert not to compete for free agents in order to hold salaries down. After free agency was first allowed through an arbitrator's ruling in 1975, salaries soared from an average of $52,000 a year to more than $412,000 a year. Gibson had this reaction to today's decision.
You know, they have broken labor laws, and they've signed the basic players agreement as well as we did. We agreed upon that back way when, and they should abide by it.
Owners Representative Barry Rona insisted each team made an individual decision on free agency, and he called for changes in the agreement with the players.
And eventually we're going to have to find, I believe, a system which may very well be very different from the system we now have in order for us to live together in some peace and harmony.
Sports attorney Bob Wolf, who represents several players, acknowledged that some teams will still ignore free agents.
Well, I think that player salaries will probably escalate for a little while, but eventually everything will stabilize itself because there will be fiscal responsibility, and I think that if a team cannot afford to pay a certain amount of money, they're not going to be paying it.
The arbitrator will next decide what kind of damages, if any, should be paid by the owners, and he'll also be asked to determine how this problem can be avoided in the future. A grievance on behalf of players who became free agents after the 1986 season is being heard by another arbitrator. But the outcome of that case is now a foregone conclusion. Richard Valeriani, NBC News, New York.
The role of free agents is the key issue in a contract dispute between professional football players and their teams. A dispute that's heading toward a strike at midnight tonight. As NBC's Robert Lipsyte reports now, it appears that there will be some burly picket lines going up around the country.
As far as we're concerned, we're now on strike.
The pro football strike seemed a sure bet for tomorrow, as defensive lines prepared to become picket lines throughout the country. As the Eagles flew off, the Buccaneers sailed away. The players of Tampa Bay were among the first to leave the job. The Broncos ran with the herd.
The players don't want to strike, but I mean, there's also a feeling that by the Players Association that maybe there's not a choice.
If the answer to the strike call sometimes seemed reluctant, perhaps it was because the key issue separating the players and the owners, free agency, is a complex idea about money, big money. If a player is free to auction his services to the highest bidder, he'll make more money than if he has to take his owner's offer or go home. Owners will make more money if they don't have to compete against each other with dollars.
We cannot do free agency. It's hurt basketball, it's hurt baseball, and I think our owners are going to stick with no free agency.
Even after a player's contract expires, he's bound to his club, which has the right to match any other club's offer or to demand compensation in future draft choices. The union wants total freedom after 4 years of service. The owners have said no. If free agency has divided labor and management, it's only confused the fans. The owner of this Los Angeles bar once played pro football himself.
Freedom for the football players to move to what city they want to play for and when they want to play for them. I think I'm backing the players 100%.
He's going to have to close on Sunday. His customers have already made strike plans.
But nevertheless, I think that the 4 of us will go boating. Yeah, boating!
Robert Lipsyte, NBC News, New York.